You mentioned need for energy realism. Could you share with the committee your Europe's problems right now of growing problem of, to me, energy poverty and energy insecurity?
Certainly. What we're seeing now with natural gas prices in Britain are about 5 times they are here in the U.S. on the wholesale market. What we saw was a warning just a few weeks ago from one of the largest trade unions in Europe, estimating that about 3 million of their members will be in energy poverty this winter, that they will not be able to pay their utility bills to stay warm this winter. So I think, time will tell, but the prospects of a cold winter and potentially mortality, people dying from the cold this winter in Europe, is a very real possibility.
So what should this administration, what should this Congress learn from Europe's energy crisis?
Do not do what Europe is doing.
So should Congress pass legislation imposing even additional new taxes and fees on oil and natural gas produced here in the United States, which is now being proposed in the House of Representatives?
Sir, I've thought about this a lot in the last few days. In my latest book, I write about the history of electricity in the United States. And it's remarkable to come to Capitol Hill and remember that 86 years ago, Senator Burton Wheeler from Montana and Senator George Norris from Nebraska, along with Representative Sam Rayburn from Texas, pushed through the Public Utility Holding Company Act of 1935 and the Rural Electrification Act of 1936. They did it because they were concerned about high energy prices throughout the U.S. and particularly for rural Americans. And to see today the Democratic Party pushing for higher energy prices, I just don't understand it, sir.
So I'm going to question for all three of the witnesses today. President Biden recently nominated to be the Comptroller of the currency, Saule Omarova. This is one of the nation's most powerful banking regulators. So in February, while President Biden was in office, Ms. Omarova gave a presentation where she discussed small players in oil, natural gas, and the coal industries. During her presentation, she said, quote, "We want them," the small players in oil, gas, and coal, "to go bankrupt if we want to tackle climate change." That's her statement. It's not mine. She's now been nominated to be the Comptroller of the currency. Do any of you believe it is in the best interest of the United States if these small oil, gas, and coal producers go bankrupt? I guess, raise your hands if any of you do. Any of you think they ought to go bankrupt? So none of the witnesses today agree with the nominee of the president to be Comptroller of the currency that these companies should all go bankrupt. It's remarkable that anybody would agree with such a statement, and certainly it's surprising that President Biden continues to support this nominee. Mr. Bryce, I want to ask you about kind of New England and the pipelines. We've already seen the referendum in Maine where people voted against the transmission lines, and it was hydropower coming from Canada to the United States. So it was renewable energy, and they still blocked, as you had mentioned. So one of the worst hit areas of the nation right now in terms of higher natural gas prices for this winter is New England. The people are already paying very high natural gas prices because of issues. The cruel irony is that New England is not far from some of our nation's cheapest natural gas, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. But for years, environmental activists and Democrats who don't really want to focus on energy realism, they have successfully killed new pipelines which would have shipped natural gas to the Northeast. Now, is it fair to say that if politicians hadn't blocked new natural gas pipelines to people of New England, that they'd be better off today?
Absolutely, sir. And it's not just on home heating, it's also involving electricity. What ISO New England has repeatedly said is that the unavailability of natural gas has resulted in less reliability for the electric grid in ISO New England. So I think this is clearly a problem, and that it is one that's been ongoing for years. And I would point particularly to the state of New York under Governor Cuomo, repeatedly blocking pipelines across New York State that could have taken natural gas north.
So is it fair to say that the problem really with New England is insufficient pipeline capacity, not LNG exports from other locations, the reason that the people in New England pay much more for natural gas?
I think that's a fair statement, and I think that it's all about supply and demand. If there's not sufficient supply, prices go up.
So last week in Glasgow, Scotland, John Kerry, U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, stated, and this is to you, Mr. Bryce, by 2030, he said, in the United States, he said, we won't have coal. we will not have coal plants. EIA's most recent annual energy outlook predicts that the United States is still going to use coal to generate electricity in 2030, as will the rest of the world. Mr. Bryce, what will be the impact to electric reliability if the United States shuts down all of its coal plants?
Well, sir, I can't answer that, but I live in Texas, and I live in Austin, and I was blacked out for 45 hours in February. And in looking at the postmortem of the ERCOT blackouts, it's clear that the power plants that had on-site fuel were the ones that delivered electricity most reliably. So I understand the urge for decarbonization, but I'm for affordable, reliable, and resilient electric grid. And reducing or eliminating coal in our electricity system, I think will lead to higher prices and a less resilient system. And that's a bad thing for consumers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Heinrich.